know that there's been some links with Celtic and Kieran Tierney returning to the club. Are there validity to those claims? And actually, could we see a return on the cards, potentially either a loan spell or a permanent move from Arsenal, potentially back up to Celtic?
I think if you look from a Kieran Tierney perspective, I'm sure he would love to go back to Celtic. I don't think he's ever hidden that he would love to go back up there. It's his club. Obviously, he had a great time up there previously before that big money move to Arsenal. I don't think Arsenal would stand in his way if he was to get any offers for him this summer. Obviously, he has spent this season out in Spain with Real Sociedad, and he's had a decent season out there as well. But it seems unlikely that he will work his way back into Mikel Arteta's plans at Arsenal. The only problem, I think, for Celtic would be how they could afford this deal. I don't see how they could afford it on a permanent basis. Whether they could do something on loan, that's open for debate as well. He's on huge wages now as well, Kieran Tierney, after that move down from Scotland to England as well. So Celtic would struggle with them. But I think if there was a way for a deal to be done, I'm sure Kieran Tierney would jump at the chance to go back to Celtic, and I'm sure Celtic would love to have their former youth product back in the club as well. So yeah, there's lots of obstacles in the way for any potential deal. But if there's a deal to be done, I'm sure both parties would love to do it.
And Pete, how about Stuart Armstrong? We know he left as a free agent from Southampton. Is there a return on the cards possible for him as well? Could we see him return to Celtic too?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised to see Armstrong leaving Southampton. I thought they might have kept hold of him. Now they're in the Premier League. He's been a good servant for them. He's underrated player for me, in my opinion. He pops up with goals. He can create goals as well. Obviously, he had a good time up at Celtic before he went down to Southampton as well. So I'm sure he'll be on their radar, maybe that they're looking at him to see him. But I don't know. I think Celtic might have moved on from Stuart Armstrong right now. Brendan Rodgers, having won the league and the cup this season, will be looking serious back in that transfer market this summer from the Celtic board. He wants to try and make an impact in Europe this season with Celtic after sort of struggling in the Champions League over the last couple of years as well. So I think Celtic might be looking at other targets ahead of Stuart Armstrong right now, and be looking maybe for younger players that they can develop.
And Paul, if we talk about Kieran Tierney, come back to him, how excited, I mean, as Pete mentioned, he loves the club, he'd probably love a return, but the fact that he'd be guaranteed a first team role and that Champions League prospect as well, do you think there is a real chance he could move? And actually, how excited as a player will he be with that prospect of European football?
Listen, they'll be disappointed with the way that things have turned out at Arsenal for him, but at times things don't work for you at a club. And with Mikel Arteta building the team the way it is, it does look like his time under that manager is limited. For the deal to be done, I can see a loan deal there. I mean, he's been out, like you say, in Spain this season. The wages, the transfer fee that it would involve would probably price Celtic out of a deal. But actually, with a player's drive and ambition to make a transfer go through, I think there's a deal to be done there for Celtic with a loan with a view, or a long-term loan, definitely a season-long loan, if it's player-driven. And I think what Pete said there about the Champions League, that's the next level of progression for Brendan Rodgers. He's gone back in there, he's done the league and cup double. But now the Champions League, they've got to get out they've got to qualify, get out the group stages. And that's the level of progression now for them to progress further in the Champions League. And with a player like Kieran Tierney potentially coming back into that, I think it would give the whole club a lift. In a similar way to, not the same scale, but Newcastle, the way that Kieran Trippier went in there. And he was the catalyst for everything. You sign a player with that level of experience, with that pull, if you like. There's a pull for other players. Kieran Trippier went to Newcastle. He was the first player in. And then you saw the ripple effect that had. Other players followed. And I think Tierney would have the very, very similar effect at Celtic. And it would show a real level of intent if the Celtic board were able to get that deal over the line. Whether it be a loan, whether it be a permanent. Like I say, financially, I can't see it being a permanent. But a loan deal would really show some intent of the club's ambition for next season.
And Pete, there have been some rumours swirling about Kyogo's future at the club, with Adam Eder being touted potentially to join. Is there an update on that, please, in his future? And how big of an offer do you think Celtic would accept? Would it be a 10, 15, 20 million pound offer that they sort of couldn't refuse?
Yeah, I think obviously Kyogo's been a real brilliant signing for Celtic when they did sign him under Ange Postecoglou. He's been the main man for Celtic over the last couple of seasons. His goals have helped him win these league titles and these cups as well. So it's no surprise that he is going to attract some interest. There has been talk of potential moves to England and everything else in the last few transfer windows as well. But he's 29 now, Kyogo. So if he is to leave, I think this is probably his last chance to get that big money move away to the Premier League, because he will be turning 30, I think, next January. So But I don't think Celtic have any plans to let him go. He's under contract until 2027. He signed his last new contract just last summer as well, just to reward him for what he's done and to sort of kill off any interest from Premier League clubs as well. So I think with Brendan Rodgers right now, as we've talked about his ambitions to try and have a right crack at the Champions League and get out of those group stages, he's going to have to keep hold of players like Kyogo. So I can't imagine Celtic would be willing to let him leave. It would have to be a fee in excess of 20-25 million to even enable them to consider to let the Japanese star go as well. He's a huge fans' favourite up there as well at the club as well, and it seems the player is quite happy and settled up there as well. And I'm sure he'll be looking forward to Champions League football as well next season up at Parkhead. So I don't see any sort of desire from either the club or the player that they want to part ways or a potential moves on the cards. I think Kyogo will probably remain at Celtic this summer.
And Paul, we saw Mikey Johnston have a really successful loan spell at West Brom. He's just returned to Celtic, of course. Do you think he could be set for another season potentially at Celtic Park? Or actually, is he likely to leave again? Would he suit a move, say a permanent move to West Brom potentially?
Yeah, but I mean, you saw how well he did last season. There's an opportunity for him to be integrated into the squad again at Celtic. I think you see the Champions League season starting. Obviously, they're going to need strength and depth. I think he's a player last season who proved that he can play at that level. The Championship's a very, very difficult league to play in. And for West Brom to be in the playoffs the way that they were, they finished the season very strongly. I thought he had an excellent season. It'll be an interesting one to keep your eye on as to what the club decide to do with him.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.